What if I said pros aren't good at aiming? What if I said your aim isn't bad, you just aim bad? When watching a good player, it's going to look like people are just walking in their crosshair, which probably is the case. People are bad, and we want to be able to abuse that and make aiming easy. So what makes a target hard to hit? There's the visual acuity, so any visual clutter that makes it harder. Graphics, if your graphics are bad, it's going to make things harder to hit because they're harder to see. And then if things are faster, it's going to be harder to hit.
Okay,
Once again, if things are smaller, it's going to be harder to hit because it's harder to see. So we want to set ourselves up for the best success. We're going to be using a couple strategies to make that incredibly easy. So when I approach aiming, I look at it as a 2D plane. So things can go left and right, and it's really easy to control it once you think about it like this. So targets move left and right. Off the bat, that means if you just use good crosshair placement, you have a 50-50 chance of hitting that shot, as long as you click. And then we're going to use movement to close that gap. So anything that doesn't happen, we can correct with movement. And then we're going to use game sense to predict what our opponent's going to do. Game sense is the most important thing that you can have in any game to be better. If you can predict what your opponent's going to do, you can react incredibly faster than if you were just to be actually reacting to what was happening on the screen. So we want to react to stuff. We don't want to have to use reflexes to react to our encounters. So that means a couple things. First off, how do you get game sense? Play the game, and then watch people in your game. See what people do that works for them. Watch people who are better than you. Just try to learn as much as you can to become the most efficient that you can. And you shouldn't just be hiding in the back. You're not going to learn anything. You want to play the game like you have aimbot, and you're going to learn eventually how to abuse the game. So you want to put yourself in unfavorable situations until you can win them. So that means 1v2s, 1v3s, fight bad fights, take space, learn how to be aggressive. And then we want to be fast. So our key is velocity and maintaining that, and that's going to really let us dodge our opponents. And we don't want to be holding W, S, or anything that's going to interrupt with the paralleling to our opponent. So mirroring, so that 50-50 we talked about them walking near your crosshair or not, you can just use movement to correct any errors in your movement without making major adjustments. So for these tiny adjustments, just use movement. Let's look at this tense clip. So we're going to see him just mirror his opponents to make things super easy. You'll see he's following the same path as the raise. He follows the same path as the sage. He's going to reset. He's even mirroring this omen, assuming he's going to take that shot, right? So he's just perfectly matching him, so that way it looks like he's standing still. He's taking it wide, and then he swings right to make the shot easier, so he doesn't have to move his crosser as much. He finds the chamber, he peeks out, stands still because he's standing still, evens it out, and then he's going to look for this breach. And then he's going to use an actual aim here. Like this is a hard shot, flicks, and then uses movement to correct. So you'll see even players who are like renowned for their aim just use movement to fix their aim. And when they aim themselves, they're going to miss. It happens. So we want to reduce the risk of us missing. Think about two players. Think about one player who hits 7 out of 10 shots, but it takes him 300 milliseconds to shoot. And think about player 2. He takes 200 milliseconds, and he hits 3 out of 10 shots. We want to be player 1. Player 2 is going to lose almost every time. So we just want to be more consistent than our opponent, and we can use movement to really simplify the game. So when we look at it 2D again, and we use our movement to correct and our crosshair placement, aiming is just incredibly easy. So use your movement to correct. It's going to slow down their velocity. So if you're mirroring, think about two cars. If you're in a car, somebody else is in a car, and you're both going the same speed, they're going to look slower. A slower target is easier to hit. We want our targets easy to hit. So when we want to hit a shot, we're going to make them easy to hit and copy them. And that also goes the opposite way. So if we don't want our opponent to hit a shot, we're going to throw off their crosser. We're going to look at their camera, look where their gun is pointing, and do whatever will disrupt their crosser placement. We don't want to make it easy for them. So that doesn't mean we want to 80-80 crouch spam in the same spot. It's the same as standing still. In games today, it'll just interpolate and average out your movement, just make you almost a bigger target. So we do want to be taking wide, fast swings. And we also want to think about at the start of our movement. In most games, there'll be a little pickup, so you have to walk before you can run. So if we're swinging a corner, we don't want to be at walking pace. We want to be at full speed. So we want to start our strafe before we hit the corner. And so, because when we're peeking a corner, we're peeking into their crosshair. And then we also want to think about people abusing the speed on our crosshair. So we want to leave a gap between the wall and where the opponent can walk out. That way we have time to react, and they just walk into our crosshair, so we don't have to actually aim. We just want to let them walk into our crosshair, and if they cut it short, just use your movement to fix it, readjust, and you got it. You want to think about too, so if you're looking at a target, you're tracking it, you're going to end up doing this arc movement. So you want to consider how that slows you down, how to control that. You also want to think about when you're aiming at a target and you're switching directions, how it's going to affect your aim. You just want to subconsciously grind that in, train that into your mind, so that it just becomes fluid. Our goal is to be just fluid, consistent, slow.